Okay, so you know you should be using web components when you need to add functionality to an application that already exists, but web components are confusing and annoying and you don't want to. You're not alone. Web components are frustrating for a lot of people. I'm going to try to make them a lot less frustrating, more valuable to you over the next half hour. First, a little about me. I'm Ryan Spencer and I've been a front-end developer for almost 10 years. And I work as a consultant with Bitovi. Bitovi consults with companies large and small to help them build better applications. We're a fully remote company, which means I've been able to work from my RV while traveling the United States. Right now, I'm in a little artist community in Kentucky, enjoying the leaves changing. React has been feeding my family for a long time, but I'd be the first to tell you it's not always the best solution. When you're working with HTML, there are a lot of JavaScript libraries that include React, Angular, and Vue. These frameworks are large and like to take over the whole page, which is great for full web applications like your banking website, Google Docs, or software that manages an insurance claim, but that's not what we're shooting for. If all you need is to add a component or two, you're going to want to turn to web components. So let's talk about it. Web components allow for the encapsulation of CSS and JavaScript within a custom tag. That custom tag is reusable and framework agnostic, meaning that once it's built in vanilla JavaScript, you can tweak it and recycle it across multiple projects. At first, this sounds like the ultimate tool. It allows you to extend HTML with a language you already know, so why aren't web components as popular as frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue? For starters, web components have a fraught history. Compared to the rapid development of JavaScript frameworks, embraced by developers and iterated on quickly, web components had a lackluster start. While web components were introduced in 2011, they didn't gain native compatibility with all major browsers until 2020. Even now, web components can be clunky and challenging to develop. But fear not. Today we'll dive into the history of web components, take a closer look at the technologies that make them possible, see them in practice, and create a simple web component from scratch. If you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe to Bitovi's channel. We're always churning out new content and uploading it to YouTube. If you have some questions, drop it in the comments. We're happy to connect and continue the conversation there. Let's hop in the time machine and head back to 2011. Picture it, the final episode of Oprah Winfrey just aired, and people watched it on television. The royal wedding is consuming the news cycle, and Charlie Sheen is having another meltdown. At the same time, Charlie Sheen is screaming about tiger blood.
I got tiger blood, man.
Alex Russell, a then senior software engineer at Google, was giving an impassioned talk at the Frontiers conference in Amsterdam. In that talk, Russell acknowledges the waning power of Internet Explorer, the rising popularity of Chrome, and introduces web components. Web components were touted as making the DOM extensible. He said web components were a step into the future, part of the process of progress. He went on to say that crafting a custom element in JavaScript allows developers to pinpoint areas where HTML failed them. Russell is insistent that web components are an extension of HTML, which allows developers to say what they mean, instead of using a class name to circumvent a tag's intended purpose. There's a sensationalist air to this talk. Russell asks the crowd to put away their pitchforks upon revealing that web components are distinguished from prefab HTML tags with a dash, like hello-world.
The second part, and this is where we get back to this question of evolvable semantics, giving our hacks some meaning, right? Putting ourselves back into the declarative side of things. This is a web component. And web components are some new work that we're doing to make the DOM extensible. This is the part where you're going to come at me with pitchforks, right?
But after presenting the intention behind web components, Russell readily admits that they aren't yet natively supported in browsers, which begs the question, why present a technology that isn't quite ready? There's a speculation in this next part, but I think web components represent, to Russell, the idea of using what's available to influence new iterations of technology down the line. Essentially, web components address the limitations of HTML while harnessing the power of JavaScript to offer an immediate solution. He believed they represented the course of technological innovation. Release the fastest horse and hope the others speed up to meet it. And in that sense, he was right. In the beginning, using a web component required a polyfill, essentially another technology which ensured cross-browser compatibility. And in 2013, Google created a stopgap with the web component library Polymer. Chrome and Safari developed a native implementation of web components in 2016. Firefox followed in 2018, and Edge rounded out the pack in 2020. As we sit here in 2022, web components do not require a polyfill to work in any major browser, making them an excellent way to build reusable components in JavaScript. Web components harken back to the original principles of web development. Elements are the building blocks of HTML. HTML is the skeleton of the web. But modern applications have outgrown the built-in elements that HTML has to offer. This means app developers rely on JavaScript frameworks to provide dynamic custom behavior. However, using frameworks often means they're complex and monolithic. A component developed for one application may not work in another. Web components give developers the ability to define their own HTML elements, and when coupled with the Shadow DOM, custom elements should be able to work in any application, making the time and effort it takes to build them well worth it. Web components can be found in action on YouTube, Salesforce, GitHub, and Google Play, some of the biggest sites on the web. These companies employ some of the best engineers in the space, and they turn to web components because of their performance advantages. Let's take YouTube as an example. It's built almost entirely with web components. That's because web components make the JavaScript footprint of their design system way lighter, ensuring the web's most popular video player has fast runtimes. Web components are also more versatile than frameworks. Not only are they interchangeable between frameworks because of their compatibility with a variety of tech stacks, they also offer cross-platform development and ensure brand consistency. Because they focus on doing a singular function well, they allow us to break up complex web apps into reusable pieces. In short, web components combine the simplicity of HTML with the power of JavaScript. So, what are web components and how can you make the best of them? Web components are custom HTML elements with dedicated UI, style, and logic. Web components are composed of a mix of 4 web standards: custom elements, Shadow DOM, ES modules, and HTML templates. Custom elements make it possible to create new tags by extending HTML and attributing unique style and logic only to that new element. The Shadow DOM keeps web component attributes segmented from the main DOM. The Shadow DOM hides the internal markup of the component from other scripts, meaning global CSS and JavaScript will not affect the element. This technology increases the reusability of web components, enhancing the value of a well-constructed web component. As I said before, the Shadow DOM is optional. While the technology is available to protect your web component from global styles, it isn't required, so if you're looking for your web component to inherit styles from your CSS, that option is still on the table. ES modules is a function of JavaScript itself and has contributed to the usability of web components across browsers. This technology provides a mechanism for splitting up JavaScript programs into separate modules that can be imported as needed. The HTML template tag is used to populate the Shadow DOM of a web component. The template tag can be ID'd with your web component's name and content, and style can be added directly between the opening and closing template tag. This ensures that the contents of the template tag is hidden from the DOM and will only be rendered when called on by JavaScript. What's this look like in practice? Let's take a look. I'm going to walk you through building a simple web component from scratch. As with anything, there's no one way to make a web component. Depending on how it functions in the larger product, web components can be written differently. There's also more libraries for web components than ever before. These libraries can take care of that boilerplate code and make it faster and easier to write your component. In the event you want to learn a simple way to write web components from scratch, that's where this tutorial comes in. Let's get to it. So we're just going to do some basic JavaScript. You can just do this in any browser, nice and easy. And so we're going to pop open a JavaScript file and we're just going to create our template. This template is just going to contain what we want the DOM within our web component to look like. It's just going to be some HTML elements, and that's it. Right? So we're going to use document.createElement, and this element will not belong to a DOM yet, so it's not going to pop up in your page. It's just creating that element that we can use later. So we're going to create an element. We're going to use that template tag, and now we're going to set the inner HTML of this template. And we're going to use a template literal that allows us to write on multiple lines within JavaScript, makes it nice and easy. Then we're going to, if I can type this correctly, we are going to create a style tag. And so we can create a set of styles that belong only to our web component. They're not gonna bleed out to other parts of the page. And that allows us to just create an A tag without having to worry that it's going to apply to every link on the site. So I already have some styles. Basically, we have this link that we're going to make, and we want it to look like a button, because I don't know, that's what we do now. We create some styles. Here we go. Paste them in there for you. Not going to type all that out from memory. So then we're going to actually create the element that we want. Throw some extra div tags in the DOM, because why not? And now we can use our A tag, and we can give it a link. We're going to give it a link to Bitovi.com because it's a good site. It's got a lot of learning resources on it. We have Bitovi Academy, some other things, and we're making a web component that anybody could use to throw a button-looking link back to Bitovi. We'll add target blank because even though I disagree with it, product owners tend to want me to throw a target blank on things. Just let me open my own tabs. But fine, that's what you're gonna want, right? So there we go. And then we're just gonna say visit Bitovi because it's a button. Nice and simple. So there we go. Now we have our template. This is what we're gonna create for our web component. It's not the most useful web component, but this is just a simple example. So now that template just kind of is floating there. It's not doing anything yet. So we need to create our web component class. So we create a class, and yeah, I know you React people are like, oh, what's a class? This is how we used to do it. So we'll create a myComponent class, and it needs to extend HTML element. That already exists in the browser. That's just the base element that we're going to use. And then, in order to kind of get that goodness, we're gonna take a constructor. The constructor runs when you instantiate a class, and so we're gonna create our constructor that will then call super. And if you're not familiar with classes, super is basically calls the constructor of the thing you're extending, so sort of like the parent. So you're saying, hey, whatever in the constructor of HTML element, run that first. So here we go. We're going to throw super in there. I feel like I've talked ahead of myself here. So we'll let the video catch up. There we go. We throw super in there, and now we can say some of the things that we want specific to our component to run on instantiation. One of the first things we need to do is we need to set up the shadow DOM. So this is allows us to access functions that are part of HTML element. One of them is attach shadow, and this says, hey, encapsulate this web component, make it just kind of its own thing. And then we have two modes we can choose from, open and closed. Both of them kind of hide from the rest of the DOM, but you can certainly access, reach into this web component if you really want to. You just have to be intentional about it. You don't have to worry about globals, but you can still get in if you want to. Closed mode isn't as protected as it sounds, so most people just leave it open, because if you really want to get in, you can. Might as well just make it easy. But anything in the parent that's going to want to access this element is going to have to do so intentionally. Okay. So now that we've set up the shadow DOM, we can now actually put something into that. So this .shadow root is essentially sort of like window.document in a way, and we're going to append child. So we're going to grab that template that we made earlier. We're going to clone it, and then we're going to shove it into the shadow DOM. The reason we're gonna clone it is this allows us to kind of reuse this thing later. So there might be a situation where you have your template and you're doing things and changing things, and then you have to reset back to the original form. A form would be a good example, right? You submit the form and then you go back to the start. So that's it. We now have a class called myComponent that is our web component. We can't use it yet. It's not accessible by the HTML. So we call window.customelements.define, and that says I'm going to add this, kind of register this with the rest of the page. So we give it a name, my dash component. The dash differentiates it as a web component, and from there we pass in the actual class. This class gets passed into that method below, and then it gets instantiated there. And now anywhere within the HTML page, we can access my component using it just like a regular tag. So just my dash component, and then it will pop up. Of course, you still have to close it just like you would any other HTML tag, like a div, a p tag, whatever. Now, if you wanted to pass in attributes, you can, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. We're just kind of covering the basics here. But you can pass in values, and you can make all the things work if you want. So that's it. That's our web component. Now you can use it.
Dress shoes and casual wear. But I'm still not done. Call right now.
So let's say we were on Bitovi.com and checking out this blog written by this devilishly handsome young man named Ryan, and we wanted to see how our web component actually works. Well, if we open up the console and we just paste in all of the bits that we just wrote, boom. Now that's actually run the code. Of course, in production, you'd put it into a JavaScript file, you would download it from a script tag, but just for fun, we can do it right here. And we can take this part, our component tag, and then we can go right into the DOM here. We can just kind of inspect this element, and let's see, find a spot to put this. That looks good, about right there. How about that? So if we edit as HTML, and right on the first line here, we throw our component. There we go. Our web component is in the application, and it works. So there we go. So that's it. That's our web component. Now you can use it. So we've delved into the history, use cases, and a demo of web components. So where does that leave us? You can reach for frameworks like React and Angular when you want to build a full application, but web components are great for when you want to add interactivity to an otherwise static page. Web components aren't dead, and while we can't make some sweeping statements like web components are the future, it is safe to say that their versatility and lightweight nature make them an important tool to have in your developer toolbox, so don't forget about them. All right, that's it for today. If you like this video, make sure you hit those bells below, like, subscribe, and you'll get notified of the next one. We've got more content coming out from Bitovi, and I want to make sure that you get to see it. Let's continue the conversation down in the comments. Have a good one.